Okay, so let me know if you can't hear me. I've been falsely accused of not talking loud enough before. Going to talk a little bit about living with the black bears in West Texas. Starting off with some history and natural recolonization to the area. Back in the early 1900s, a guy named Vernon Bailey did some surveys and said that bears were common in the upper canyon of the Chizos, and in the Davis Mountains, they were holding their own against some surprising odds. And then I thought was really cool was in the southern part of the Guadalupe Mountains, black and brown bears were common. So what were the odds that he was talking about? They were hunting. Apparently, bear tastes pretty good. I'm sure a few people know that. Hopefully not from Texas bears. But there's multiple reports of people eating bear steaks, Christmas roasts, and hams. So up until the 1890s, there was an annual Davis Mountain bear hunt, and even after the 1890s. And then his survey said that in 1901 they were still common. By 1944, the national park said that there was no resident bears to the area, and it was thought that they were extirpated by the 1950s. And here's a picture of a bear, probably from that annual hunt there around Marfa. And then from the 40s to 80s, there were some scattered reports of them coming back from Mexico. And increasingly in the 80s, visitors were reporting that they were seeing them come back. In 85, Mexico closed all hunting seasons. 87, they were considered endangered in Texas. First breeding population was documented in the park in 88, and then they were moved to threatened in Texas in 96. So here's some data from our black bear database from 2000 to 2021. You'll see that there was 479 statewide bear reports entered into the database, and most of those were in the Trans-Pecos. Looking up to more current times, we've kind of had a explosion, it seems, in West Texas, and the current total is up to 1,065 and up to 79 this year, which I made this presentation on Tuesday, and there's already a couple more to add. And you can also see in 2024, there was only 22, and that's because our database crashed and we lost a whole lot of data. And those 22 were the ones that we could find notes for and remember to update when the database came back online. So there's actually quite a few more than that. So what does that mean for us? You can see by the picture on the left, lots of human-bear interactions. Firstly, with dumpsters, people are pretty bad at eating 100% of their food, and bears like to eat trash. And so if there's a dumpster, especially in Terlingua, it's probably going to get hit by a bear at some point. Next is wildlife feeders. We feed a lot of deer in Texas, and bears are not excluded from sitting and eating all night long at those deer feeders. And lastly, I hope this video you can see, this report actually came in Tuesday while I was working on this presentation. Just here south of Alpine, there was a female bear that brought her cub up onto the porch. And so they're moving into some more residential areas and around households. And hopefully we can curb the behavior of this one before she teaches that cub to be bad the rest of his life. So getting into that a little bit, how to secure your dumpsters, or how to secure your garbage. Bear-proof dumpsters sounds pretty simple, but getting a bear-proof dumpster in West Texas was not simple. And working with the dumpster companies was pretty hard, but they will bring them out now. And I'm welcome, Matt. So a lot of people, especially in the neighborhoods and stuff around here, have common dumpsters. So they'll keep their trash in the garage until the dumpsters are empty, and then they go put it away. Garages are not very good bear-proof areas, we found out. And this bear was in the national park getting into that garage pretty much every night. And what you can see at the bottom is an unwelcome mat that the landowner made. It doesn't hurt the bear as bad as it looks. It's pretty uncomfortable, and it does keep them from getting into places like garages. Lastly is electricity. When you can't get a bear-proof dumpster for a few months, you've got to figure something out. And so we electrified a bunch of dumpsters. The ground here is pretty dry, so it doesn't conduct electricity very well. So you put cattle panels around the bottom and run the ground to that cattle panel and then electrify the dumpster itself. Well, hopefully everybody can see this, but it's a bear getting into a dumpster. Once he touches the metal, he gets a pretty good shock and runs away. Same thing for wildlife feeders, and this is anything, deer feeders, bird feeders, anything that puts feed out. One of the best ways is electricity and being very creative for whatever feeder you have, and unwelcome mats in some cases. Here's a picture of an unwelcome mat around the bottom of a bird feeder down in Terlingua. And it worked for a while until the bear figured out how to get around it. That's an up-close picture just showing kind of how to be creative in those situations. Deer feeder is a little easier, especially these that throw corn. Pretty much the same as the dumpster. You put a grounding apron around it and then electrify the feeder, and it works as long as you don't have pigs. You can see that fence charger is hanging off the side. Pigs came in, ripped the fence charger off, and then the bear tore into the feeder. If you're feeding protein, it's a little bit different because you don't want to shock the animal you're trying to feed. Most people already have a pin up around it, so you can just ground that panel and then run a single hot wire over the top. And we found that this works pretty well. So none of this is 100%, but it's better than the bear going straight to the feeder. And they really don't like electricity, so a lot of times they won't come back, or they'll come back and they'll sniff the wire, and they somehow can tell if it's turned on or not. But this one, almost the same thing, but it's a grounding apron on the bottom with all electric wires around it. That one takes a little more upfront cost and a lot more maintenance. The video that we had a sow with a cub get through this, and the cub was through it, and the mom kept getting shocked on the outside, and by the time she got in, it was a pretty bad deal. She tore down all the cameras and all the chargers, and she was pretty upset. And one of the more difficult things to secure is the household trash and pet food. You would think keep the feed inside of a trash can and in a container, in a secure container and location. Remove the food bowls from the porch. A lot of the calls we get is going to houses and they don't necessarily have feed out, or they make sure their dog eats all the food every night, but bears don't care. They can smell the food in the bowl and they'll be on the porch anyway. And then resort to electricity or unwelcome mats if you need to. And then getting back to that keep feed or trash inside of a secure location. This shows that it may not be as simple as it sounds. That's a hole that a bear tore into a really well-built metal building. Got a couple claws in there, and it looks like a pretty small hole, but the bear ended up being over 300 pounds. And that's what he smelled on the inside. He was in there trying to get some cattle cubes. So what we did in that situation, we closed the hole and then just used what was at the ranch, which was a small piece of cattle panel and some rubber and a fence charger, and electrified that piece over the rubber and grounded the other one going around it. And this is a really long video because I could not figure out how to edit it to make it shorter. But that's the bear that went through that little bitty hole. Just speed it up a little bit. He does get shocked. Hope it was worth the wait. So four main tools that you probably caught on to. Contain the attractant. Use an unwelcome mat. Usually it's better to use electricity if you can. Aversive conditioning, I didn't talk about that too much. But banging pots and pans, because if you catch the bear showing up the first night, it might work. After he's gotten some food, it's usually not going to work. They're going to come back. They don't care too much. And be creative. You can see that the picture on the right, that's not just a deer feeder you can run down to out west and pick up. That one was homemade, and the bear was still getting into it every night. But we electrified it, got the legs off the ground and grounding apron, and it worked pretty well. And lastly, biologists are here to help if you've got a situation we've seen a lot in the past few years, so we can come out and help to the best of our abilities and try to get that figured out. One question we get a lot is, why don't you just take the bear somewhere else? Trap it, take it to Big Bend Ranch or Black Gap. And so I'm going to go into a little bit of an example of why we don't translocate bears anymore. So this was a little bit of a famous bear, at least in our office. Showed up to Terlingua Ghost Town. He's probably there. The first report we got was November 6th. On November 8th, shot him with rubber buckshot. November 9th, he was back. And this is in the ghost town, like around all the restaurants, in the middle of the town, eating in the dumpsters of the restaurants. He was back the 9th, shot him again on November 10th with rubber buckshot. And then he kept coming back the next night, so he was just harder to find. On the 14th, we hazed him really well. We watched him go into a dumpster and then went over there and started banging on it and stuff. And it took a long time for him to come out. But when he did come out, we shot him 5 times in a row with rubber buckshot and probably 15 to 20 times with the paintball gun. And in less than 15 minutes, he was in another dumpster. So we figured out that once that food is there, they're not going to leave no matter how much you shoot them with rubber buckshot or paintball guns. So we decided to translocate that one to Black Gap because it was one bear. He was in this high human use area. The residents were doing the best they could in the short time, but they were kind of just getting hit too much, and we couldn't get bear-proof dumpsters quick enough. He was slightly tapped by a guy on a motorcycle in the middle of the highway, and he was not responding to that conditioning. So we moved him to Black Gap, and hopefully that was the end of it, but it wasn't. He came back to Terlingua Ranch in, I think it was 6 days. And that you can see 33 miles from Black Gap back to Terlingua Ranch, and instantly started doing the same thing, getting into dumpsters. He dug up a donkey, but we just essentially moved the problem to a different neighborhood. And the same video from earlier, that is actually the bear that we took to Black Gap, hitting the electrified dumpster probably 10 days after translocation back in Terlingua. Yeah, and so since then, what we've been doing is trapping them on site. We've only done it a couple times now, so we still don't know for sure that it's going to work every time. But trapping them on site and then giving them a real bad time and shooting them with rubber buckshot, and we've been using the taser, and the taser has been working. So we've done it twice so far. The one that got into the barn, we hazed that one with the taser, and so far both of the ones that we've tased have never come back. So hopefully that fixes it. And I'll take any questions.
I thought that.
Are there any problems with cows and bears here in the area?
Any problem with what?
Cows? Cattle?
With cattle? Yeah, cattle and bears. None that I'm aware of. It's nothing for live animals. People, they'll get into chicken coops, but nothing with cattle. We have electrified many chicken coops, and that works.
Yeah, Terlingua in that area, has the dumpster problem been resolved? Do they now have secure ones in most of those restaurants?
The restaurants for sure do. And then in Terlingua Ranch, pretty much every person that's requested a bear-proof dumpster that I know of has gotten one. It just took a little while they were getting hit. Everybody was wanting one right now, and they couldn't make them that fast. What was the driving force for the dumpster company making the switch to bear-proof dumpsters? That was us and the public calling them a lot. And they upped the price quite a bit. but the people, it's better than picking up trash every day. Everybody that had the problem switched. But yeah, it was a lot of calling, and eventually it worked.